Now, investors are moving towards countries which have a high environmental, social and governance score, and India ranks high on all these three indicators, said Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Now, addressing the virtual Global Investors Roundtable, he once again assured the prospective investors that his government is committed to furthering the ease of doing business and making India a tech hub. Let's listen to what the Prime Minister said during the virtual summit.
India's growth has the potential to catalyze global economic resurgence. Any achievements by India will have a multiplier impact on world's development and welfare. A strong and vibrant India can contribute to stabilization of the world economic order. We will do whatever it takes to make India the engine of global growth resurgence.
India has shown a remarkable resilience in COVID-19 pandemic, said Prime Minister, especially both in fighting the virus and also ensuring economic stability at the time of the crisis. He also said India's quest to become Atmanirbhar is not just a vision or a government initiative, but a well-planned economic strategy.
India's quest to become Atmanirbhar is not just a vision, but a well-planned economic strategy. A strategy that aims to use the capabilities of our businesses and skills of our workers to make India into a global manufacturing powerhouse. A strategy that aims to use our strength in technology to become the global center for innovations. A strategy that aims to contribute to global development using our immense human resources and their talents.
Well, what holds for India and the investment ahead after Prime Minister Modi's call to invest in India? To discuss further on this, we are joined with our guest, Mr. Dilip Chenoy, Secretary General, FICCI, and A.S. Bhal, former Economic Advisor to Government of India. Thank you. Thanks both of you for joining on Rajya Sabha TV. Now, sir, my first question to you, Mr. Bhal, as we open the debate, what do you make out of Prime Minister's address, especially when he says that India can actually lead in the economic resurgence, global economic resurgence to say? Mr. Bhal.
The PM's call to global investors comes at a very right time when the global economy is coming out of a major crisis which the COVID-19 has affected the world by. And by talking about the strong points of the Indian economy, you know, the democracy, the huge demand, the technological capability, the Prime Minister very rightly is signaling to the world that India as a global manufacturing hub is providing the right environment, and it's a good time to come and invest in India. In fact, as Honorable Prime Minister said, it's one of the best times to come and invest in India. You know, with the global changes taking place and global tweaks which have to be made to the global value chains to keep it more resilient and self-reliant, a lot of changes are happening in the global economy. And this is the time where a country like India, with well-entrenched democracy, with a huge demand, where contracts are in place, and where there's a large skilled force, is a sort of country to go to. And as very rightly said, whatever India does, whatever way the Indian economy performs, will have a huge multiplier effect on the global economy. We are the 5th largest economy in terms of the GDP, and we have such a huge middle class, and we are embracing Industry 4.0, the technological revolution in a big way. We are improving our ease of doing business. Our states are sort of competing with each other to bring in investment. So it is a good time to invest in India, and India is sort of providing the excellent ecosystem to do so.
Thanks, Mr. Bal. Now, we also have Mr. Chinoy with us. Mr. Chinoy, like my first question to you would be, let's face it, I mean, COVID has been a very difficult time for economies worldwide. So what are, to begin with, the challenges for economic resurgence for a country like us?
I think that if you see the Prime Minister's speech, right, he talked about that during the COVID, we found that there were three driving forces which were here. The first was the system, and he said that the system is geared, and he talked about how the system delivered free food train, how we delivered cooking gas, and how we did the DBT there. The second, he talked about policies, that we created the right policies to contain COVID, right? And we also created a whole lot of policies to enhance growth going forward. And the third, he said that the people, by maintaining social distancing, wearing masks, and participating in the whole program, actually enabled this to happen. So going forward, the system, the policies, and the people have to continue to work in tandem so that we can see growth. To give you a very, very example, although it just came out in passing, or if you look at the beginning of the pandemic, in terms of economic activity, we did not have the capability to do masks, PPE equipment, or ventilators, right? But together, working with startups, we created the Arogya Setu app, working with the different segments of industry, whether the textile industry, the FMCG, or even the alcoholic beverage sector. We ensured that enough sanitizers were available, enough PPE came in, and now we are actually a world leader and we're exporting. So if we take that analogy, and then if you take what the Prime Minister said, that he's announced a lot of reforms, labor, agriculture, he's looked at the production-linked incentive schemes, they've made a whole approval and change in the financial system. And in order to grow, we need investment at this point of time. So in addition to domestic investment, we need foreign direct investment. And over the last 5 months, while there's been a negative growth or a fall in foreign direct investment around the world, India has witnessed a growth of about 13%. So I think going forward, we have to take this collective action across different sectors, across different areas. We also refer to the education policy there, and across manufacturing, agriculture, and services. And like he talked, is Atmanirbhar is not just a slogan, it is actually a plan going forward. And we all need to collectively execute in the plan, and we need foreign direct investment, and we need foreign investment in India. I think that was the overall approach in the speech.
Right. Well, Mr. Bal, now we heard the term Atmanirbhar Bharat during the time of pandemic, and now we often hear that the government is saying that the recovery in India is faster than what was expected. I'm just referring to the Union Finance Minister's statement of late. Now, which are the sectors you think are the ones which will actually push India's growth on a faster trajectory? Which are the sectors where the government should focus on?
A lot of thinking has gone into which are the sectors to focus on. So the Ministry of Commerce and Industry has identified 24 sectors, which includes pharmaceuticals, electronics, capital goods, textiles, sports goods, and what have you, in collaboration with industry bodies like FICCI and CII, and a lot of intensive work is going on how to boost growth in these sectors. So India's pride has sort of always been, our auto sector, including auto components, has been our pharmaceutical sector, it has been our IT services sector. And now, as the economy matures, we are evolving into more sort of technology-intensive sectors like the electronics, like mobile phones, like computers, and what have you. And a lot of incentives are being given, incentives like the performance-linked incentive, and there's a phased manufacturing program in which we are trying to concentrate on sectors like, again, electronics, pharmaceuticals, textiles, and a host of other sectors to give a big boost to the Indian economy. And the most important thing I would like to tell here is as we often discuss with our colleagues in the industry chambers, the kind of collaboration which is occurring between the industry bodies like FICCI, CII, and the Government of India, and the way the decisions are being taken almost at the speed of thought. In fact, our Minister Piyush Goyal is very well known for taking decisions in the midst of a meeting. He'll just pick up a call, he'll ring up the concerned secretary or the state chief minister and get things done. So what I'd like to say is these 24 sectors have been chosen, and through intensive deliberations, the comprehensive incentive package for these sectors are being worked out in collaboration with industry.
Well, Mr. Bal, just continuing, and especially in conjunction to, as you said, that a lot of thought has been gone into reviving economy, and there has been dynamism from the government side. Now, especially in terms of the tech sector, now, which are the areas you see which will actually help the tech sector to grow further? Because that was also what Prime Minister emphasized during his address at the virtual roundtable conference.
Yeah, so Industry 4.0 is being embraced by the private sector and government in a big way, which includes things like Internet of Things, 3D printing, and the entire Indian infrastructure of digitization. Digitization is the name of the game. So whether it is government working, whether it's private inventory management, supply management, everything is being digitized. And as Professor Nandan Nilekani very rightly says, if there are three instruments which have boosted productivity in India in a big way, they are: one, the UIDI, the Aadhaar card; number two, the aggregators like the transport aggregators, the demand aggregators; and number three is the third instrument is so the first is the Aadhaar card, the second is the aggregator, third is the United Payments Interface, UPI, through which payments like Paytm and all are made. So digitization and electronics is the backbone of the growth we are working on, and India has taken to Industry 4.0 in a huge way. So all things are being digitized. Our electronic sector, our mobile, we are the second largest mobile manufacturer in the world. Of course, it'll take, things will happen in stages, and right now raw materials, components and all are being sort of incentivized to be made in the country. Similarly, the capital goods sector, our TV sector, our refrigerators, all are being given a big boost through various incentives of the government.
Well, Mr. Chidoy, to you now, continuing with the issue of the growth in tech sector. Now, we have seen the size of a mammoth population like India. We have seen a rapid digitization. Is there a good balance between the digitization and the growth of tech sector, or you see the further needs to be done so as to achieve some sort of an optimal level so that we grow even further?
I think your question is actually spot on, and Anand actually talked about the groups that are done under the Ministry of Minister Piyush Goyal, Ministry of Industry and Commerce. Right. Now there we are looking at TV, drones, electronic components, and other medical electronics, right? So in these areas, what we are actually seeing, and also electric vehicles to look at it, we need to ensure on the software side we have an advantage, on apps we have an advantage, but in the hardware side and in the app side or the intermediary app side, need to get investment. And therefore, if you look at the product-linked incentive scheme or the phased manufacturing program that has been announced by MITI for electronic components, and for that, there's a focus to actually get the hardware manufactured here. We are still very import dependent on computers. We are, although we are now transiting to a net exporter of mobile phones, but we are still net import dependent on components. Whether they're populated circuit boards or whatever it is. So the whole strategy here is how do we actually get the manufacturing of electronic components, including the devices that allow you to do Industry 4.0, the Internet of Things, etc. In the software and connectivity, we are actually leading the world, but in the hardware is where we need to actually invest. And there is a strategic move under both MITI and also under the groups under Minister Goyal, which is led by Dr. Pawan Goenka, And we are looking at the different segments on electronic components where collectively everybody is actually working together to see how we can manufacture in India for India, and how because when the earlier stage in February, March, when COVID is very high and the supply chains from China got disrupted, there was a major disruption in India. So how do we become resilient and how do we actually become Atmanirbhar by looking at alternate value chains and looking at alternate ways of manufacturing and attracting investment into India, not only for India, but make for the world.
Just continuing on the same manufacturing quotient of India. Now, my question here is, sir, as you rightly pointed out that during pandemic we saw a shortage from the Chinese part of it, and then there was a call of Atmanirbhar Bharat and making ourselves self-sufficient. So where do you see our manufacturing sector going, especially post-COVID phenomenon?
I think three things have happened. The first is that during the COVID, a lot of things that were not normally done. For example, digitization of the distribution system, digitization of the manufacturing system. I mean, mining is a very intensive activity, but normally you needed people in the mines to monitor it, but they were able to digitize and monitor it from home. And just yesterday, the government has come up with a whole set of announcements and regulatory changes that enables you to do a lot of IT and BPO stuff, which was actually embedded in a lot of regulatory process and approvals to do it from home. So a lot of the digitization process that was actually initiated during the COVID period will become the new normal going forward. That means we'll get more productive. We'll also see much more, rationalization of SKUs and looking at a new, shorter supply, shorter chain between designing a product and to the market. And if you look at the last 2 months, or look at last month in October, traditionally everybody thought that we'll have a downturn. But Hero MotoCorp, for example, announced more than 8 lakh vehicles being produced and shipped out in a month, the highest since they were actually they started manufacturing in India. So you are seeing a lot of other sectors, whether it's companies in the FMCG sector or companies in the steel and cement, they are coming to higher than their pre-COVID levels, and they are expanding in the ceramics area or in the glass. The whole thing of making the vaccine, the vials to carry the vaccine, the injections to allow people to be injected, and the whole logistics and cold chain required to supply and take it from the corner to every corner of India is actually going to create a whole new ecosystem and a whole new set of industries. And India is already the vaccine capital of the world. We will actually double that. We are the pharmacy of the world. And the Prime Minister actually said that the agricultural reforms that have been done could enable India not only to be the granary of the world, but also the food processing capital of the world. So there are many, many sectors where we can take a global lead in this going forward. It is for, and his whole address really to the investor community there was saying that, whatever government needs to do, we are willing to do it. We are willing to even meet you individually to address the issues. If you're looking at growth with stability, it is India. If you're looking at growth with green, it is with India. And we have a huge technology. We are the world's largest startup hub, and we have a huge lot of innovation going from you, which you could actually benefit out of.
Right. Mr. Bhal, just continuing on the ecosystem, as Mr. Chinoy mentioned, what India has seen in the last 2 months, especially post the COVID-19 phenomenon. Now here, like Prime Minister in his speech mentioned about the resilience of Indian people and the policy initiatives of the government. Here it's important to further the ecosystem, to further the ease of doing business in India and cutting off the red tapeism. Where you see the policy dynamism coming, or do you see further more is required or more will come in days to see?
As we all know, India has done very well on the ease of doing business scores. So we've come to a 63rd position. and which is a huge credit to us. And now we've percolated it down to the states. Now the states are also owning up the reforms, and there's a whole lot of systems and processes which are being tweaked at the state level to improve the ecosystem in the country. So, Indian industry traditionally has been suffering from two things: a slightly high cost of doing business and the problems with ease of doing business. So under the cost of doing business, land, labor, capital, electricity charges, all these aspects are slightly higher compared to our comparable countries. So all these aspects are being looked into. The land portals are being managed. The labor codes have been brought in. Electricity charges are being trying to be rationalized. The logistics is trying to be improved. So the cost of doing business is being improved gradually but surely. And the ease of doing business, as we already discussed, we are already doing reasonably well. And everyone's sort of cognizant of the fact that when a businessman wants to come and do business, he doesn't want too many hassles, and that the state and the industry bodies are there to support them. So here I would like to give the example of Invest India, a body set up with the participation of the government and the private sector. Now, these people are the investment and facilitation agency for the government and for the private sector, and they're doing a wonderful job. They've been awarded 3 or 4 times the best investment and facilitation agency in the world. Right. And the most important thing, as Dilip Chuna will also agree, is the dialogue between the private sector and the government. Now it's an open, transparent thing. Dilip and me are just a mobile phone away, just an email away. And the kind of interaction, the type of deep stakeholder consultations we are having is throwing up very good action points. And the whole system is geared up, accountability is being brought in. I'm told in the Telangana government, if you delay something in the window clearance, you are penalized for it. So that is the last stage they're reaching. So the whole system is being geared up to embrace investment, and along with investment, entrepreneurship also. Yeah.
Gradually, if I can add quickly to that, 2 quick points.
Sure.
One is that, we are seeing a resurgence of demand now, right? Mm-hmm. And, this is maybe driven for Diwali and the festival season and, all of that. So, and the services sector is not yet picked up fully. And therefore, you are seeing that industry is saying that, if the need be, and there's need to actually do a demand side led intervention. And you saw the first steps being announced by the finance minister when she announced the LTC into cash and, the other festival advance, etc. So, perhaps looking at the situation in November, December, you need to look at a greater demand simulation. The other aspect really looks at that, there are some certain sectors which have taken a very deep hit, hospitality, tourism, healthcare, other services sectors. Now, they also have an impact on manufacturing, because if you look at food processing and processed food, a significant part of the business is to the HOKA, the hospitality, restaurant, and the other segment. Now that has to be revived, so there's a need for a special package for those sectors. And what is you're hearing over the last 3 or 4 days, starting with the finance minister, then the finance secretary and the secretary of economic affairs, and even the prime minister saying that if whatever needs to be done to maintain growth, to ensure that we grow, will be done. So that's a very, very important message, even to those people who are already invested in India, as also, again, looking at those people investing in India. So this is a twin approach, really looking at it going forward.
Well, as we move towards the close of the show, this is something which Prime Minister emphasized in the beginning of his speech. Now, this is a question to both of you. I'll start with you, Mr. Chinoy. Mr. Modi talked about that companies are moving towards countries which rank high on the indicators of environment, society or social, and the governance. Now, where do you see India's transformation in these 3 sectors of late?
Actually, ESG, which the Prime Minister referred to, is a very strategic statement that he made. Mm-hmm. Very interestingly, there are companies in India, and in fact, the triple bottom line has now gone to a quadruple bottom line, and it has been talked about by, let's say, a company like ITC in every speech for many, many annual reports many years ago. So in India, there are companies who are really good in this whole ESG kind of thing. And also we have a mandatory reporting by a certain amount of companies on these factors in their annual reports. It has been recently been introduced. And global investors, right? And this is a pitch to global investors. Global investors give a huge weightage to companies and to sectors that are very high on ESG. And therefore, the Prime Minister saying that corporates are there in India as a country is going to give it a whole focus, assures investors, and it is actually aligning with their vision and ambition, because they want to fund. He also ended with growth with green, right? So this is a direct kind of a communication and saying that we are fully aligned with your ambition and your vision going forward. And you have capital, and India is the best place to invest that capital, keeping in mind the environment, society and governance structures.
Right. Mr. Bhatt, I would like to close with you. Yes. So has India seen phenomenal transformation on these three sectors, ESG? Please, go ahead.
To just add to Dilip's points, you see the way India has taken up to solar power.
Right.
We are really doing well on the solar power front, and we're meeting a huge chunk of our total power requirements through solar. Look at the way India has taken up electric vehicles. We are setting up the ecosystem for electric vehicles, and there's some problem with electrical batteries, lithium ion and all, but we are struggling with it. So India is embracing green development in a big way. And the Prime Minister officially also talked about India moving towards the green way. And as Dilip also says, the global investors